for a minute, introduction to security, and the objectives, and these objectives kind of go with the objectives for Security Plus. What I would like for you to do is to, for your journal, how about for your journal, annotate the Security Plus objectives. Please don't do the first week and just give me that one for the rest of the class. Because some people have done that. The objectives that are covered, and there is a link on the Moodle page for the Security Plus objectives. Annotate those, and you may want to make notes on it. Please do that, because they're not anything dramatic. I think the first one says, you know, the difference between a virus and a Trojan, and on and on and on. The things that you'll have to know when you take the Security Plus test. So we're not going to cover all the objectives, but we're going to cover a number of the domains. But describe the challenges of securing information, information security, and explain why it's important. The types of attackers that are common today. And what we were saying earlier, for those of you who just got put in a class, is this is kind of an interesting time to have this because of what's going on with the WikiLeaks and the attacking them, and then the counterattacks, and on and on and on and on, and the denial of service attacks that are happening right now with a number of major providers. I guess they've taken down, at least for a while, with Amazon and PayPal and what was it, MasterCard. And there was somebody else, but I've forgotten which one it was. So this group of individuals, using freely available from the internet software, are taking down these sites. Now, it takes more than one of them, and apparently what they're doing is they are voluntarily allowing their computers to become zombies, which are computers that are controlled by somebody else. That's why we worry about malware. That's why we worry about how we configure firewalls, for instance. Because typically on a firewall and on your firewall at home, probably everything gets out and nothing gets in. Is that a true statement? True statement? Everything gets out and nothing gets in. Is that a dangerous situation? What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Why? Get Brandon off Facebook.
I ain't on Facebook. I'm on the portal.
Why is it dangerous? Because, like Nathan says, what if you get these diseases? What if you get malware and you become a zombie machine? What's stopping you from participating in the zombie army? How did you get this zombie anyway? Installed his software. Which you may or may not have known about. You probably would have had to say okay at least in Windows 7, wouldn't you? Because it says that I'm about to make this change. Some of these places can infect you with really out you knowing it. And why would that happen? We'll go back to Windows. Why would that happen? What kind of credentials does Internet Explorer have when you're out browsing around on the Internet? What kind of credentials on your computer does Internet Explorer have? We really are going to have to go back to the Windows and do the whole course over, the whole series over. Whatever you're logged in as has the credentials of the logged in user, unless you use the secondary logon to right-click Run As. And what is the default user authority in Windows? Administrator. So I didn't change anything. I'm out there scrolling around, and I don't have Windows 7. I got Windows XP, which doesn't ask any questions at all in many cases. And I get infected, and I can't figure out why. Because it all starts with configuration. How do we avoid these things? One of the ways you avoid these things, don't be an administrator everywhere. They gave you the right-click Run As to do all of the stuff that you need to do as administrators, so we can do that. Other objectives, the basic steps of the attack, we talked about those a little bit, the 5 steps in defense, the different types of information security, careers in security plus certification that can enhance your security career. If you go look at IT jobs that are available, a number of them do have the word security in them. So they want at least some basic knowledge of security for a lot of the jobs. If you're going to be the security administrator, obviously this is not going to get you there. It's going to get you on your way there. But we'll hopefully look at some things that maybe make a little more, will help us there. No simple solution to securing information. Is that a true statement? Sure, there's a simple solution to securing information, isn't there? Don't make it available. If it's not available, then can we use it? But it's not very useful. Security is one of those things that you've got to determine how much risk you're willing to take in the risk reward. If you don't want to expose a resource, then don't expose a resource. Anytime that you make it available on the internet, there's a risk. There's a risk that somebody's going to do something that you don't want to that particular resource. Is it always as easy as you read about? I don't think so, but we'll see as we go through some of these things. Different types of attacks used today, the difficulty in defending against these attacks. Back to what's going on, the denial of service attacks that are going on. The companies that are being attacked are pretty big companies, probably have a relatively large number of security specialists working for them. And they've still had their sites brought down for varying amounts of time. Are there things that can do that, can help you with that, depending on the type of attack? And I really haven't seen anything, maybe somebody else has, that says exactly what they're doing. They're saying that they're going like they want to log on, which to me is what would be called a SYN attack, where you do 2 of the 3 legs of the 3-way handshake. Fill up the buffer. Once you fill up the buffer, you tie up the website. And that's what they've been doing, is not going out after information, not trying to get usernames, passwords, bank accounts, whatever else, privacy information. They just want to make those websites unavailable as their means of protest. Hacktivists, and that's a term that they will use in the types of hackers that we have. Hacktivists are one of them, and that's what these guys are. They have a cause, and their cause is that they're protecting Assange or making their displeasure known about him. But it is difficult to do that. What we try to do is to expose as few resources as possible to the cloud, to the internet, and keep the private network as private as possible. That's what firewalls are about, is to not let users in, hopefully not let very many at all in. Keep as many of the resources that you want to make public available in this area we'll call the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, which is someplace between the cloud and the private network, and not let any kind of connectivity or minimal connections through the firewall onto the private network. Typical warnings. Today's security attacks and malicious program was introduced at some point in the manufacturing process, a popular brand of digital photo frames, and that was just very recent, wasn't it? So those digital pictures had a virus in them, basically. Microsoft, years ago, sent out some software that was infected. Can it happen? Sure. It can happen to anybody as you go through these things. The Nigerian email scam. Anybody got one of those lately? How does that work? How does that work? I have billions of dollars that I want you to help me recover. How do those guys actually do this for real?
They ask for money.
They ask for money? Actually, they kind of ask for money. They may ask for money. What they want you to do is take their money. But what they'll do is they'll send you money, actually they'll send you a check and ask you to cash it, and then send them back some portion of that, or was too much, send me back part of it. What they get is the part of it is sent back because the check they sent you is not real. So those things. Booby-trapped web pages. And one of those, who's this? One of the popular singers had one that if you rolled over a particular portion of the web page, you got infected. How would that happen? Back to the original question of Internet Explorer's credentials. What kind of credentials does Internet Explorer have? If you're running it as administrator. What if you run it as ordinary user? Whatever that user's credential is. Can ordinary users install stuff? You get this really silly thing that says, you can't do this. Anybody other than me ever gotten, as you're going out on the internet sometime, a pop-up that says you don't have the authority to install this program that you didn't even know you were trying to install? All the time. Because then you're not running as administrators, huh? That'd be a good thing. Because the administrator could just install it typically. Virtual machine. Virtual machines are a great thing to do, and then if you get it infected, just delete it and start over. A worm disables Microsoft Windows Automatic Updating and Task Manager. Those are really difficult because they say you can't, and then because they just don't allow it, and then you can't get to Task Manager. Sometimes if you go into safe mode, you can get those things open, but a lot of these things get really deep and are very difficult to make work for you. One of the later, newer kinds of things are the ransomware. Some people around here have gotten those. That's when you go to the site and say, oh, you've got a virus. Here, we'll help you out. Scan my computer, and you scan your computer, and golly, you have viruses, and now you do have a virus.
But you know what, the thing.
And if you'll send us $45, we'll give you back your computer.
Whether you scan it or not, even if you close the window out, you're stuck.
I've not had that issue. I've gotten those.
What a lot of them do is there's a picture of my
Yeah.
computer screen. If you click
Anywhere in there, you got to be real careful where you click on those things.
and there's one that's part of the link, and there's one that actually closes out the window.
Yeah.
It's hidden.
Yeah, they're pretty tricky.
And the worst one I've seen come across so far actually puts itself in your boot sequence.
Yeah.
It boots up a specialized safe mode that you can't do.
That you can't do. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've had to
They are really nasty. They run out of the Soviet Union typically, and I read an article about those guys that not only they ran out of the Soviet Union, they had this thing set up just like a corporation. They have an HR department, 401ks, all that other good stuff. Run as a company. So they're really pretty sophisticated.
Why doesn't even matter in the Soviet Union? Does
No,
well,
it doesn't, because where are these bad guys prosecuted? In the U.S. In their own country. The Melissa virus, which was pretty nasty years ago, was written by a hacker in the Philippines. You know what happened to him? Nothing, because it wasn't illegal to write a virus in the Philippines. So you get into a lot, and when you get into this cloud, this magical cloud, you got to get into a lot of jurisdictional things, and that's one of the reasons they're trying. The powers that be are trying to put some sort of form around a number of these things. To address 25 security flaws in its operating system OS 10, this is the operating system that's supposed to be invulnerable to viruses, right? Why does Windows have so many viruses?
Vulnerable.
So many people use it.
Just don't write as many viruses.
And why don't they write as many viruses? I agree.
It's common.
Because it's not as common. What we call targets of opportunity. How many Windows machines are there in the world? Millions and millions and millions. And how many Apple machines are there? There are more than 12, but not nearly as many. How many Linux machines are there in the world? Linux is more difficult to infect, even fewer than Apple. I think that we're looking at the percentage of the user base that Apple has is somewhere around 5%. Linux is, I don't know, but I would guess around 8% or so. Growing, but it's not gotten large yet. So what are the attacks, the warnings? And what's going to be the warnings? Your processor utilization goes crazy, you can't get to anything. Or these other ones in the boot sequence gives you this really cool safe mode. Here you are in safe mode, whatever, and you can't make the stuff go away. Pay us and we'll take the virus off.
People actually overwrote safe mode themselves, so you
Yeah.
just can't get around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
The anti-phishing,
cover what data I could
and I don't know that the anti-phishing working group reporting that the number of sites continue to grow, I don't know that that would actually stun anybody. Research at the University of Maryland attached 4 computers equipped with weak passwords to the internet for 24 days to see what would happen. These computers were hit by an intrusion attempt on an average of once every 39 seconds. If you look at logs, and a few years ago, Roger Farmer was here, and he was going to bring into a security class, going to print the logs to show them how many hits we got on the firewall. It's a firewall log. Until he found out it was about 1,000 pages worth of hits in a 24-hour period. There are people out there scanning. What are they scanning for? Open ports. Once you find the open port, then you see if there's a vulnerability. If there is a vulnerability, is there an exploit? Is there some way to exploit that? The best way to exploit something is find unpatched machines. What they typically do on the patches for the unpatched machines is once they find out what the patch fixes, they'll reverse engineer it. Now they know what they can attack on the machines that haven't been patched. That's why unpatched machines are really very dangerous to all of us. And when we're talking about that, typically we're talking about Microsoft, but Linux has patches that come out on a pretty regular basis too. When I was playing with Ubuntu, it seemed like every time I turned it on, it had some sort of an update that went along with it. Security statistics, successful attacks, TJX reported over 45 million credit cards got stolen. You know how they got stolen? Through their wireless network.
That was Target?
Huh? No, TJX is TJ Maxx. It's actually a Canadian company. By the way, the guy that compromised all these 45 million credit cards went to Turkey and tried to do the same thing. He's now in a Turkish prison, which is not where you want to be. But because that's where he got caught.
It'd make a U.S. prison look like there was soil.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Were stolen 2005 to 2007. This stuff had been on these servers for quite a long time before they even knew that they were being attacked, that people were stealing these things. What happened on this one, if you'll go back and read it, and this is from memory, obviously, but what happened on this one is that they decided not to upgrade their wireless access points. And companies, stores use a lot of wireless. There are a number of tools that you can go around and scan what wireless are available, and a lot of times they really name them really clever, you know, like the TJ Maxx, whatever. A lot of the point-of-sale machines are actually wireless, so there are a number of things out there. Best Buy, 3 years ago, I think, they were having a parking lot sale, and they discovered that the point-of-sale machines that they put in the parking lot were sending all that information back to the store unencrypted, which meant that your credit card was going across the airwaves unencrypted. So what can happen? But they opted not to upgrade their wireless access points. The network manager did, the security manager did. So this was a conscious decision. They had WEP. So what happened was they cracked WEP. And again, I'll get that video up to crack WEP. It doesn't really take that much effort to crack WEP. Got onto their wireless. The wireless was configured in such a way with poor controls that it actually got into the main network. And I think that here, when you get into the wireless, what can you get to? We'll pick on Sam since he's always getting on the wireless and he put it up. What can you get to? Not as much. You can get to the internet, right? I think that's where that one goes because that's a VLAN that it puts you on. And firewalls are not supposed to let you go out and back in because that's one of the ways that we would use, one of the techniques that we would use if we allowed our private addresses in through the firewall. The out and back in is one of the things that you don't want to allow in through the firewall is your private addresses. Some of the major breaches, one, and I think that's in here, that's in the book I know. The average cost of a data breach in 2007 was $197 per record compromised. 24 federal government agencies, the overall grade was a C-. So this is an area that you can do a lot to improve. It's something that really is very difficult. This should be in your book. This goes through some of this is the number of identities exposed as you look down the list, 450,000. Massachusetts Division of Professional Licensure. These are all, this is not all, but this government agencies, administrative staff, 159,000 on down to 337,000. One of the other things that happens as we go through these things is how often are the hackers ahead of the updates? It's a question I love to ask. All the time. How many say all the time? You got to vote, yes or no. All the time. All the time. One time. So how do they get into all these machines? Unpatched machines. Say? No, actually from the time that the patch is released, one time. The time between the attack and the patch is decreasing. The first time that it happened was like 1.5 years. The last time it happened was like 20 days, but that still should be enough time to get particularly your important machines patched. Difficulties, the speed of attacks, and the speed of attacks come with I think probably the communication back to the one that's going on right now, the anonymous users group. How can they get all this organized so quickly? We have the speed of communication and the speed of attack, and they can switch targets very quickly on these things. That goes with the sophistication. The simplicity of the attack tools. They're not really, and if you'll backtrack, look at the attack tools, they're really not that sophisticated. We're going to say, hey, I want to have a connection, and just not complete the connection. We just don't send them the third leg of the three-way handshake. Or if you want to flood a channel, now it becomes more and more difficult as the bandwidth goes up. There are tools out there that you can flood data onto a connectivity channel. Detect vulnerabilities more quickly, and that kind of goes back to the scanned, whatever, 39 seconds. The University of Maryland people put this thing up. How often do you get hit if you're directly attached to the internet? And it's a lot. And a lot of them really are looking for a port 21. They're looking for an FTP connection so that they can upload something. Some of them don't want to be. Some of them want to destroy. Some want to deface. Some just want some place to store their stuff. All of the torrents, where are they stored? Usually on a computer someplace. Is it on your computer? Maybe, depending on what you're sharing, because some of them go after the individual users. delays in patching hardware and software products, and we've talked about that already, are distributed attacks instead of coming from only one source. And you really want to do that. User confusion is another one, and all of these guys, I think, are making the user confusion more apparent. One of the latest updates to, I think it was to Java, when you went through it, it said, oh, install this toolbar or whatever. And a lot of people just click through that stuff. Same thing when something wrong with this certificate that you just got pops up. You know why it popped up? There's something wrong with that certificate. Could be something simple, could be something really severe, but you may want to look at that before you say, oh, okay, yes, just become a clicky and just click right through these things. The sophistication of the attacks, the required knowledge of the attackers are kind of down here. Required knowledge has been going down, and the sophistication has been going up because we got all these GUIs. You just double click on something and it happens. The script kiddies. How much knowledge does a script kiddie have? And the answer is probably not very much. And then you get the professional hackers. How much knowledge do they have? Quite a bit. What do we want to do with? What do we want to do? Or what do we not want to do? But password guessing, self-replicating code, password cracking on up to the GUI, the packet spoofing, stealth diagnostics, sniffers. Sniffers is up here pretty high. Why would that be up there? Because you got to know what you're looking for, looking at when you look at the packets, and looking for when you look at the packets. This is just something that's kind of here, I think. But one of the things it does say is backtrack, and that's what this says up here. Backtrack is, if you're going to do anything in the security world, is a tool that you probably want. There are a number of them out there. But this one goes on and on and on. I think this is actually backtrack 3 because backtrack 4, I'll see if I've got my copy here. I think I do. We'll put it in and take a look at it after we get done with the chapter here, the number of tools that are here. The wireless tools, cracking, Kismet is one of the tools that we use here. Other ones are available as you go through it. It really is a chock-a-block, and each version has more tools. The last one that I know of, at least, is Backtrack 4. Open source, freely available, bootable DVD. Runs on a Linux base. And you're going to find that most of the tools, most of the security tools really are Linux-based. Some of them have been ported to Windows, but not a great number of them. Some of the scanners and things like that have been, but a lot of the tools are still only on the Linux machines. But they're out there, they're available. The reason, description, speed of attacks can launch attacks against millions of computers within minutes. Part of that is, I think, the communications that are available on the internet. And the speed that you can distribute the software that you need. The denial of service attacks that are going on right now are all voluntary, as far as I can tell, that they haven't actually tried to send this attack software to users, but they all the ones that are using have volunteered to do that. Sophistication. Attack tools vary their behavior, so the same attack appears differently each time. And there are a number of things to do that. We have morphing viruses that move around that look different each time that they do something. So simplicity of the tools, you don't really have to know a whole lot. It's a matter of double-clicking and running something, maybe filling in a little bit of information. Vulnerabilities, detect vulnerabilities more quickly. The attackers can discover the security holes in the software. All of that's because of the numbers, because of the communications ability, as well as the speed of the machines and what goes on. The numbers of them that are trying to do these things. And this is something that Nathan had talked about a little bit, delay in patching. The vendors are overwhelmed trying to keep up. And yes, there are delays. Microsoft's gone to the once a month, except the occasional out-of-band update. If it's really particularly bad, they'll do an out-of-band update in the middle of the month to try to fix those things. Distributed attacks, lots of attackers in different locations. If they all come from a single location, and we were having years ago lots of attacks were coming from Korea. What companies did then was just simply block the Korea block of addresses. You can't get through the routers, and you can't do any of that stuff. And then user confusion. The users are required to make difficult security decisions with little or no instruction. What are we going to do? What should I? Should I take this? What should I install? What should I what should I not install? If I get something, how do I get rid of it? So what is information security? And this is defining it. Security can be considered as a state of freedom from danger or risk. That sounds pretty reasonable, doesn't it? This state of condition of freedom exists because protective measures have been established. What protective measures do we establish to protect our information? What do you do to protect your private information? Do you take any measures? What? Authentication, but lock the doors, firewall, shredder. Use a shredder. Do you shred your all the stuff that gets mailed to you? Burn it. Burn it's effective. Shredding is effective. How do we do these things? So we have to take steps, and on a number of you talk about the things. Password, keeping the password private, good passwords, strong passwords, different passwords for different things. Don't use the same passwords for everything, because if it gets compromised, then everything's compromised. Be particularly careful about maybe when we go into Starbucks, and we want to use the wireless, or McDonald's and we want to use the wireless. What kind of connection do we have there? So different things that we need to talk about. Guarding information, information security, guarding information that is digital format ensures protective measures are properly implemented. Cannot completely prevent attacks or guarantee the system is totally secure. Could you ever make a system totally secure? Unplug it? Well, if somebody comes in and steals it. They had a case about, I don't know, 3.5, maybe 4 years ago in Australia, where instead of just trying to hack in, the perpetrators walked into this location with clipboards and just took the servers. So they got unplugged, but the information probably wasn't secure, was it? Lock the doors. Does that make it secure?
Not really.
Not really. Burglar alarm. Does that make it secure? More secure. More secure. Somebody's taking your stuff, but it may deter them. I agree. It may deter them, though.
If those clipboards people would have been authenticated, had to get
Authenticated. We're just going to use we'll just use the ninja way. What kind of people are guarding this stuff? I mean, as you go through. But you're right. There are, and I guess out of sequence here, what we're really talking about is defense in depth. There are lots of different steps that are required to protect information. Starting with configuration, start with some really, really basic configurations. Because we could take a bootable, we talked about backtrack, boot to the DVD. Or we could take ERD Commander and boot to the computer. But what do I got to be able to do in order to make that effective? I can be able to boot it. What if I just turned off the booting capability from the DVD? Just say, no, can't boot from a DVD. Could I then use those tools? No. But what are you A+ guys will say, oh, I'll just take the side off and reset the BIOS. And you could do that as long as you had the time. How can we prevent that? We could lock the door. We'll get Chris here, we'll lock the door. What kind of steps do we need to take? And there are others, obviously, firewalls, all the really cool stuff that are out there that we can use. But there's some real basic things that you can do to secure your network. For those of you who weren't in the class when we first started, there are some videos on the page. One of my favorites is the no-tech hacking. If you get a chance, watch it. They're just YouTube videos. There are a lot of them out there. There are a lot of good videos on YouTube if you go out and look.
Is it all resources?
It's just down at the very bottom. It's embedded. Information security is intended to protect information that has value to people in the organization. Comes from the CIA, and this is one half of the project. What we want to get started on here and work on the next time and present on Monday next. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What does all of that stuff mean? Availability is the one that they're attacking right now, isn't it? We had an availability attack, kinda. It wasn't really an attack. We had an availability issue 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago on a Saturday. And some of you may or may not have been trying to get on the virtual machines. Power went out. Remember when they had the fire on the telephone pole? Read about that? It got here. Power went out. What happens when the power comes back on? What happens to the servers? Nothing. Do they have UPSs? Yeah. How long are the UPSs good for? About 15 minutes. UPSs are for orderly shutdowns. So what happens? And it was over Thanksgiving, wasn't it? It was Thanksgiving Friday because the network administrator was out of town. Now what? Oh, we just go turn the computers on. Which ones are you going to turn on? What are you going to do about the virtual machines that the servers are running on? Huh? That's what they did, actually. We kind of have one, and this is for all of you Active Directory folks that just finished. Saturday morning, Robert sent me an email. Can't get onto the virtual server. The DNS, or actually ROADC1, which was configured as the DNS server on that server, had gone down. DNS went down. So now we can't authenticate because we can't find a domain controller. There are lots of things to protect that can cause these things. Lots of redundancies that you need to think about as you go through them. Sam hasn't tried, but I'm going to pick on him anyway since he brought his laptop today. Here we go. He got on the wireless, and that's where he's supposed to go. But what if he wasn't happy? What would he do? So I want to use my computer. I don't want to use yours. He plugged the wire. Could we prevent that? Sure. As long as we have the switch configured correctly. Configuration things, just things to think about. Before you get to all the really, really fancy stuff, like we're going to set up this sophisticated firewall or whatever else, but some basic configuration. Where do a lot of your attacks come from? Disgruntled employees. So there are people that may have a little bit of knowledge about the network. Students, no. Actually, we haven't had a whole lot of issues with students trying to do that. Occasionally, we've had some that claim, but there was no real evidence that they actually did anything at all. But the CIA confidentiality, integrity, and availability confidentiality is we keep the information, the private information, private through a lot of different things, encryption being one of those. Integrity means that what we sent was what you got, or what was sent is actually what you got. Any of you lately downloaded softwares? A lot of them have these MD5 signatures along with the file. What does that do for you? Let you know if you got the right thing. How do you do that? Huh? A hash analyzer. You have to get a hash creator. What you want to do is create a hash of that file that you downloaded and see if its hash is the same as the one that they have posted, to see if somebody's changed the information. And availability is pretty obvious. There are lots of different ways to affect availability. Achieved through a combination of the three entities, and also the other half of what I'm going to have you do, the AAA, authentication, authorization, and auditing. Authentication, prove who you are. Authorization, what can you use? And then auditing, what did you do? What did you do while you were there? So those are really the kind of the foundation concepts of security. This is kind of a nice slide of the in-depth, what are we going to use, procedures, and we kind of talked about that, hopefully a little bit, or at least imply that. Procedures. Let's look at Skyline College. What should be the procedures, do you think? Because you're going to have to write a security policy. We might as well start talking about it now for Skyline College. What about locking the rooms? Should they be locked when they're not occupied? Should the lights be on or off?
Are we in here or are we not?
Well, if you're in here, we shouldn't lock it. Actually, we should, then we keep the people out that are late. But no, what about, I say in the afternoon when they're not occupied? Lights should be off? I think, yeah, that would be mine. And is there a right or wrong answer for any of this? Not really. Is there a best procedure? There may be a reason to have the lights off. But my personal preference would be the door locked and the lights on so that, as Chris said, you can see if there's anybody in the room that shouldn't be in the room. Could you have the lights off? Sure, if you got the doors locked. But to me, that just makes it a little bit easier for them. What about the computers themselves? What about boot to the DVDs? Should that be on or off? Should be off. It's not, but it should be off. I think the one where Lysina is, I actually configured as a demo what would happen. And on these machines, it's kind of interesting. If you try to boot, if you have it turned off and you try to boot to an external device, it'll ask you for the administrator credentials in order to allow you to do the booting. So you have to have the BIOS password. And then we could have the switch configuration so that somebody couldn't come in and plug in their laptop. Why would we be so concerned about somebody coming in and plugging in their laptop?
Then you get a virus from the laptop.
Could get a virus from the laptop. We don't know what's on it. We don't know what kind of tools may be on it. Because they'd be able to get to the information if they're in the room, in a class, doing stuff, and you log on to the computer, you're going to be able to get to the same resources, actually to more resources, because you have the single sign-on in order to allow you to get to those things. So what are we going to use for these things? People, personnel security, and these are kind of like people wandering around that, who are they and should they really be here? Another one is trying to educate, and education is going to come up with many, many different ways. Educate people so that they know what to do. People call up, and in the eCPI world, I don't know, 8 months ago, 10 months ago, a year ago, somebody was either emailing or calling, I think they were emailing, some of the people that were fairly high in the organization saying, oh, this is the help desk. Send us your credentials so we can check them out. And some of them did. So now you own those email accounts. May or may not be important to you, but that's part of the education. And the products, physical security, what are we going to do? How do we do these things? What kind of physical security should we have? What kind of physical security do we have? All of these are elements of the security process itself. If you take the Security Plus, they want you to start out with a fence. We took our fence down. But start out with a fence to keep people as far away as possible. There are lots of ways, and each of these things should help with the security a little bit in the defense in depth. Is anybody other than me, when you started to doing a 5-minute job, takes an hour and a half? Am I the only one that happens to? Because you do this, and then you got to do this other thing before you can make the next thing, and then something else happens, you got to do it before you can do on and on and on. That's kind of what defense in depth is. Does any single thing stop users or attackers? But what we want to do, the objective is to make our stuff more difficult to get to than the next guy. You may have heard me tell this story, but you heard the story about the two guys are out jogging in the woods, hunting or whatever. Black bear pops up. Or actually, I guess you could have been in downtown Roanoke last week and a black bear popped up. And the one turns to the other and says, we got to outrun that bear. And the first one says, I just got to outrun you. Security is the same way. What you want to do is make yourself a little more difficult than the next guy. Because then they'll go there. I say products, physical security around the data may be as basic as door locks, and there are lots of different things, intrusion detection. We have door locks, alarms, motion detectors, cameras, security cameras. The security cameras weren't put in to spy on people. They were put in for security, obviously, to see what happens. And they have been used a couple of times for things that have happened that probably shouldn't have happened. People who implement and properly use security products to detect data, and I think to train those users, the procedures that are in place. And there are differences, and we'll talk about policies a little bit later, so that when you get to working on this thing. But policies are basically what you will do. Procedures are how you do it. The policy might say, well, lock the doors. The procedure would say, Mr. Geis at 1 o'clock will go around the building and be sure that all the doors are locked in the building. That would be it. The policy says you will do it. The procedure says how to do it. How are we going to do these things? Comprehensive definition of security is that which protects the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of information on devices that store, manipulate, transmit the information through product, people, or procedures. This sounds like somebody in Congress wrote that, doesn't it? What does that mean? And you have to do that when they do the laws, because what are we really talking about? If we just talked about a piece of paper, then something that was sent electronically wouldn't qualify. So the confidentiality of devices, notice we don't say computers, we don't say hard drives, we don't say flash drives or anything else. Devices, anything that stores this information. Store, manipulate, transmit the information through products, people, and procedures. So how are we going to do these things? And that goes back to the CIA. What are we going to do to protect the information? The information, some of the terminology, an asset, something that has value, a threat, as an event or object that may defeat the security, and the threat agent is a person that has the power to carry out these things. The asset, and I think in the old book they had something like the asset would be maybe your stereo. Huh? Is in this book too, the stereo? Okay, vulnerability, we'll get to that one in a second. We'll get to that one. So the asset is the stereo. The threat is a hole in the fence, right? Or an unlocked car, maybe. The threat agent is the person's going to steal the stereo. When we do security for these things, vulnerability is the weakness that allows the threat agent to bypass security, and the risk is the likelihood it will happen. One of the other things that you want to guard against in security is spending more to protect something than it's worth. I was watching a TV show one time that I can't remember the name of, so I won't say what it was. But anyhow, they were looking for somebody who had taken this other guy's car. And he said, oh, I know how we can find it. So I got LoJack in it. So it is. It's a 1987 Oldsmobile. Who puts a low jack in an 87 Oldsmobile? That's, I used to be a car thief. Yeah. But how much are you going to spend to protect the resource? Don't spend more than it's worth to protect the resource. And people want to do that. Risk can't be entirely eliminated, because what if we took that computer and turned it off like Sam wanted to do? Yeah. And encase it in cement, put it in a 50-gallon drum, and dropped it in the Marianas Trench. Would it be absolutely secure? No. It'd be pretty secure, but it wouldn't be absolutely secure. And there are lots of different ways how much security. And one of my, again, the things that I like to use are flying on airplanes. How hard is it to go over here to Roanoke? More difficult than it used to be, but go over here to Roanoke Airport and get on an airplane. Got to have a ticket. Got to have a picture ID, right? And probably now luggage. They don't like people traveling without luggage, do they? Moderately intrusive, a little bit of problem. Anybody ever try to get on Air Force One? How hard is it to get on Air Force One?
Why not hard to get a ticket?
Huh?
Why would it be hard to get a ticket?
You know how hard it is to get a ticket? You know how far in advance they start your investigation?
In the woods?
Probably about 6 months. Probably about 6 months. It's really, really secure, but it's not very useful. The airplanes are pretty useful, but not as secure. So you have to strike a balance in all of these things. How much is it worth? What is the risk? How hard do we want to make it to be? You know, everybody loves to complain about Vista, and it has some issues. It has some issues. But it's kind of like people say, give me something really secure. So they did. That's too hard. So they made it a little bit less intrusive, painful with Windows 7. But you Linux guys, what do you got to do if you want to do something on Linux? You don't just say okay. You got to put in a username, the super user username and password, right? Get some security there. It's not really all that convenient, but it is more secure. So secure is not necessarily going to be convenient. So here's the guy. We got the vulnerability, the exploit, go through the fence, and then the loss of the stereo, and then the threat agent here. So the way we're going to steal a car stereo. Assets. Do this and we'll take a break. The term asset, car stereo, employee database. Or how about TJ Maxx's credit card database? That would be the asset. The threat, steal the car stereo, steal the data. Steal the data. We want to get that information so that we can sell the credit cards. And that happens. I saw another one. They have some of these odd things out there that everybody gets, not everybody, but a lot of the media get on these kind of bandwagons. And they were doing a special. They had a reporter doing stuff. And we're getting into a chat room where they were selling credit cards. And they thought their credit card would be worth something. And they said, oh, it'd probably be worth about $5. So they sell them cheap. But if you've got, 14 million of them, you can sell them cheap. $14 million, $5 is pretty good. The threat agent's the thief, the attacker, the virus, or the flood. However, we're going to attack the resource. A vulnerability, a hole in the fence, a software defect, and the other vulnerability here I think could be configuration issues. Something is improperly configured. We haven't taken all the precautions that we should. Exploit, climb through the hole, send a virus to the unprotected email server, lots of things you can do with that. Or presume that somebody's going to be logged on and running around on Internet Explorer as the administrator, and they're going to roll over this thing, and I'm going to infect the machine through the website. The risk And what we do with the risk with Amanda Stereo here is got insurance. You transfer the risk with the insurance company. And in our example of information security is educate the users. Don't click on stuff. Don't open attachments from people that you don't know who they are. Just don't do those things. Let's take a break here since I think I'm putting everybody to sleep now. Okay, so the importance of security information, and we kind of beat the importance to death. What we want to do with this thing, we want to protect the information. It could be the data, the credit card account, or the identity theft, the privacy of individuals. And there's certain elements, obviously, that people are looking for in order to get that information. Cards left unpaid, leaving the victim with debts. And has anybody in here ever had credit card identity theft or credit card identity theft, been a victim of identity theft? We've had some students that have, and it goes on for years, trying to get that resolved. So that's something you really want to be very careful about. Huh? Yeah. 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 But it goes on and on and on and on and on. Legal consequences, and these are things that you're going to have to comply with depending on where you are. HIPAA being one of the, around here, biggest compliance issues. Doctor wants to go out and get himself an iPad and do his stuff on it. Can he do that? It depends on what? It's got all that stuff. Can you do it? And the answer is it does depend, but it has to be encrypted. All the connectivity has to be encrypted because you can't expose those records. They're trying to go to electronic records, but then you've got to protect the records, encrypt the communications. All of those things have to be considered. Sarbanes-Oxley, Graham-Leachman, the Patriot Act, California Database Security, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. If you get into something that has these, please be sure that you look at those particular laws because you do have to comply with them. Maintaining, and this is cleaning up, this is an average cost number of employees. We'll just go across the top on average hourly salary if it's $25, number of employees. To combat the attack is 1. 48 hours to clean it up is going to cost about $4,000, and you lose 81 hours of productivity. We get down here, if we have 1,000 employees, we get about 1,200, and it says 1,293 hours of productivity loss, and it costs $220,000 to clean it up. So this stuff does cause issues. And this goes back to even spam. How much time do you spend deleting spam, maybe? Or if somebody actually clicks on one of those things. Why do they keep sending that stuff?
People are clicking on it.
Somebody clicking on it, yeah. Somebody is. If it wasn't profitable, they wouldn't do it. So terrorism, cyber terrorism, that's a new term that's getting more and more and more and more play. Now we have the the government cyber terrorism task force or whatever it is. Why haven't they taken down this WikiLeaks site? Huh? Out of their jurisdiction, hey, where's the jurisdiction end and begin in the cloud? Huh? Why didn't they take it down?
They don't know how.
Sure they did. Oh yeah, they could take it down really quickly. So why not do it?
There's a lot of sites to take down now.
A lot of sites to take down. All they want now, WikiLeaks is the only one that they were worried about. That's where the information is. So why don't they just take it down? They do know how.
Does they have a freedom to do that, to have that information?
They what?
Freedom of speech?
Freedom of speech. It's stolen.
They didn't.
I know that's what everybody wants to say, freedom of speech, and he's a great patriot. And
They didn't steal it though.
they don't want anybody to know the tactics, to steal the tactics, to observe what you've done, so that if you really need it, you can launch the attack. what kind of tactics. And the term that you'll hear is honeypots. What are honeypots for? They're a lot of trouble, but they sound really, really cool. But they're really designed to study the techniques that the hackers use so that you can better counter the action. So if the Anti-Cyber Terrorism Task Force revealed how they're going to do things, people could watch that and then they could attack or build the sites differently later on, particularly governments that you might want to go after. Who are the attackers? We got hackers, script kiddies, spies, employees, cyber criminals, and cyber terrorists. The term hackers has become synonymous with the criminal hackers or crackers. Hackers themselves are not really the bad guys, the black hats of the world. They are people with a great deal of computer knowledge, and they use it for good. Crackers are the ones that use it for their own. Crackers are criminal hackers. What? Yeah. Hacker, generic sense, anyone who illegally breaks into or attempts to break into a computer system. Narrow sense, a person who uses advanced computer skills to attack computers only to expose security flaws. That's a true hacker. Because we have this certification, certified ethical hacker. I mean, some people say, what's an ethical hacker?
Did you ever finish the
No. I've done some of the coursework, but no. Book's like 4,000 pages, or so they told me. They never take anything out. They just add to it. It only gets bigger. It goes back to attack day one. Attack one, day one. Day one, attack one. Breaking into, and please remember this, breaking into someone else's computer system, someone else's wireless access point, someone else's anything is illegal. If you do this using your newfound knowledge, which you're getting, you're on your own.
But there's no security.
Doesn't matter.
How do you break in?
Doesn't matter. Okay, I have a question. Then. Let's say you parked your car in a parking lot at Valley View Mall and left the doors unlocked, and somebody took your brand new, just put into the front seat laying out in the open iPad. Huh? What if you forgot to lock the front door of your house and they came in and stole your brand new $3,000 LED high-def television? Did they break the law?
Like getting pissed off at somebody for taking data on your unsecured Wi-Fi network is like getting mad because I heard you when you yelled in public.
Well, could be. You're talking to the wrong guy. You need to talk to the lawmakers. You need to talk to the lawmakers.
What are they doing to Google now?
It is, and I don't make the news, I just report it. So now you've been fairly warned. And I have it on recorded that you've been fairly warned.
Quality control.
Script kiddies, and go back to the things that are easy, unskilled, break into computers, create damage, download automated hacking software, and this is where this usually comes from. The script kiddies usually scripts or double-click, run the script out of some of the chat rooms. There are a lot of chat rooms out there. If you go to these things, if you want to visit these things, I would recommend you use virtual machines to do that with. I'm not saying don't go, because it's kind of educational, some of this stuff is. Just be careful what you do with it. If you want to attack your own website, crack web, go against your own website, that's okay. You can do anything you want to your own stuff. Sometimes considered more dangerous than hackers because they have unlimited amounts of leisure time which they can use to attack systems, particularly during summer vacation. That's my comment, particularly during summer vacation. I used to kind of think that a lot of the attacks came around August and September. I figured it's because these kids been sitting around bored all summer working on attacks. It's not really happened later. Spies, computer spies has been hired to break in and steal information. There are people that do that for a living, obviously, to attack specific computer systems. What was the game? What are the two big online games?
I like StarCraft right now.
Huh?
Or like two really big ones.
Two really big ones.
Yeah.
What are they?
World of Warcraft and like StarCraft or like
Yeah.
EverQuest.
I don't remember what it was. Which one was it? 3 years ago? I think 3 years ago got stolen from the CEO's computer in his business, or at least they claimed it did. Just before Christmas, and they didn't get their new version out for the Christmas sales. Spies, who's going to do that? Employees, students, employees are one of the biggest risks. We spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of time, everybody got a firewall on your network at home or your computer at home? We got a firewall here. We got a filter router and a firewall. Probably a couple firewalls between here and where we go to. But where's one of the biggest threats? Right here in the building. Firewall do us any good? This is what employees are about. The other one, if the wireless can get onto your network, is wireless, because how far does the wireless signal go? Long way. Actually, not that far, but it goes outside the building. And if somebody can get onto your wireless, they're in your network. They don't have to worry about your firewall or any of that other stuff. Disgruntled employees attack, and some of them, it's a get even or I know more than you do kind of deal. See what I told you. Why do they attack? Cyber criminals. And we won't call these guys that are going on right now cyber criminals because they say they're hacktivists, and they do have an objective. But cyber criminals, attackers, identity thieves, and financial fraudsters, people that are trying to steal your information. Belong to organized gangs, Eastern European attackers, and there are, I think, probably, and again, this is opinion, a lot of those coming out of Eastern European, out of the Soviet Union, because the economy's been so bad. What can they do? I think sit around all day and try to hack stuff and get money. The ransomware, where does it come from? Out of that area generally. So what can they do? What they're looking for is money. The other one, okay, so I'm talking about cyber criminals, technical universities, strong technical universities. That'd be you guys. Huh? Low incomes, unstable legal system, tense political relations, and all that kind of does roll up into a lot of Eastern Europe still, because they have strong technical universities, all of those elements, and no real means to support people with all the education that they do have. Financial networks, all you banker guys, where they're targeting. That's where the money is, isn't it? What good does it do to attack me? I don't have any money. Who are they going to attack? Credit cards, spam to commit fraud. And everybody's seen those, right? Double click here to go change your PayPal credentials or whatever else. Dear PayPal customer, they don't use your name. It's not there. Cyber terrorists, the motivation defined as an ideology, and that's kind of what we're dealing with the counterattacks for the WikiLeaks. Goals to deface electronic, to deny service, and that's where they're going to the legitimate computer users. They're trying to they are mounting denial of service attacks against these individual locations. The big ones in Amazon, because they refused them space. Did you guys know that? Did you know how big Amazon was in the cloud before they started talking about this? I mean, why are they going after Amazon? Amazon, Rackspace, who's got an office or an office in is it Blacksburg? Christiansburg area, is one of the big providers for the cloud. They manage about 53,000 servers. Amazon's another large provider of servers. So that's why they're going after them. When they initially got taken down, they moved their servers to Amazon, and Amazon said, no, thank you, and then they had to move someplace else. That's why they're attacking Amazon. PayPal, because they took the donation ability away. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know any of them have been down for a great length of time. They talk about a couple hours or periods during the afternoon. MasterCard, I think they were probably down for the longest. When they started doing this, I went to, just out of curiosity, and I guess that made me part of it because I just wanted to see if it really was stopping it. I tried PayPal, and it was still up. Now, I don't think they're attacking all of them at the same time. They may as they get more and more users involved in the attack. But what they're trying to do is stop the commerce at those sites. Attacks and defenses, a wide variety of attacks, the basic steps used in most attacks, the same basic steps protecting computers. Against these steps in attacks are 5 fundamental security principles. The 5 steps in the attack: probe for information, penetrate the defenses, modify security settings, circulate to other systems, paralyze the networks. If you were going to do some crime, that's basically the steps. I'm going to say rob a bank, but I don't want to go there because then you got to say, oh, he's trying to rob a bank. What are you going to do? What do they do? In the movies, they always case the joint, right? What's going on? That's probe for information. What's there? What do you think all these people with this computer guy hit every 39 seconds? What are they doing? They're probing for information. What information are they probing for? Ports. Well, ports are available. Are there vulnerabilities? And then are there exploits to go with the vulnerabilities? Just because there is a port open doesn't mean that you can necessarily use it, do anything to it. There has to be some way to exploit that. Penetrate any defenses, and that's going to be the exploit. So we're going to probe, we're going to do our scanning, we're going to find the open port. It's there. Then penetrate the defenses with an exploit. Modify the security settings. Once we get into the system, we're going to escalate our privileges. Once we escalate the privileges, then we can do whatever we want to the machine. Circulate to other systems, we're going to infect the other systems with whatever we're trying to get into the network itself, and then paralyze networks and devices. On a voluntary basis, the denial of service, and I'm going to keep going back to that because it's one that's going on right now. On a voluntary basis, that's exactly what's happening. Probe for information. Well, they kind of know already where they're attacking. Penetrate any defenses, and the users have voluntarily allowed their computers to be used. They're going to get the software. Modify security settings if that's required because, again, your firewall could be configured not to let anything out as well as not to let anything in. Circulate to other systems, again, voluntarily in this case, and then paralyze the networks or devices. That's what the attack is about, when they actually attack the sites themselves. So probe for information here, and I think it's kind of what we said, ping sweep. That's why, how many of you have ping turned off, ping response turned off on your firewalls? Yeah. Why don't you want to do that? Because if it's not alive, there are other ways, and we'll look at Nmap, there are other ways we can do a synchronization attack. If you've got other ports open, we'll just try to do a connection, and it just drops the connection when it says, oh, yeah, that one's alive. So ping is something that, yes, it's a live candidate. Port scanning, ICMP queries, and password guessing are parts of the probing. Penetrate the defenses, email attachment, buffer overflows, backdoors, Trojans. How are we going to penetrate or compromise? And again, in what's going on, nobody had to do that. They voluntarily did those things. Create new files, modify, create new files, modify what's going on, register the trapdoor. We're going to put a backdoor in so that we can get back in. One of the last things that these guys are going to do on the modify the security settings is to delete the log files. You ever notice that in a Windows system, what's the first entry in the log file when you delete the log file? Who deleted the log file? So that you can see hopefully what was going on there. circulate to other systems, and these are a number of ways. Email, web connection, FTP could be a worm, goes from system to system, paralyze the networks, crash the servers, deny access to those services. Defense, protecting by layering, limiting diversity, obscurity, and simplicity. Some of these things are kind of like weird. Obscurity. That's like putting a hidden share out there. Does that keep anybody from getting on a hidden share? It's obscure, but it's still there. Are those things findable? Yeah. Diversity. Diversity is good, but it's kind of can get expensive and requires a lot of training. We got maybe a Cisco product and a 3Com product, or a D-Link and a Cisco. You've got to be proficient in each of those. The reason that you want the diversity is so that if something gets compromised, you can't use the same compromise for all the devices. So if we got all Windows servers and we compromise the Windows servers, golly, we now know how to compromise all of them. But if you've got Windows and NetWare and Linux, the different methodologies are required on each of those operating systems. Layering, information security created in layers, and we kind of talked about that, starting from how far out we want to go right down to the system. It's right down to the individual system. And the one here, the servers themselves, yeah, the passwords and certain things are shared, certain permissions to different things, lock the knock, lock the building at night, burglar alarm, all those sorts of things. UPS, not one that goes forever, but there are UPSs on the systems. Instead of having layers making it unlikely the attacker has the tools or the skills to penetrate all the layers, and that's what we want to do. And I think that we have our wireless set up now so that it's not as big a risk. Wireless is always going to be a risk because it goes outside the walls, and it's on usually about 24 hours a day. How do you want to configure these things? So the layered approach, defense in depth is the term that everybody talks about when we do these things. What devices are we going to use? Limit access. Who can get onto these computers? Friday, nobody could. Can somebody walk in from off the street and just sit down and start using a computer? Have we limited access? Who can get onto the virtual server? People I put in a group. Do we have a limited access? Absolutely. So limiting access to information reduces the threat. And in a lot of cases, who can get into certain areas? When I was at Sinclair Fleet, my last assignment in the Navy, there were you had to have, certain stripe colors on your badges to get into certain areas. To get into the briefing area, you had to have something else, or you had to have, the stripe and the key code to open the door. So how are we going to limit those things? So we're going to limit access. Diversity penetrates one layer. Diverse layers means that breaching the security of one layer doesn't compromise the whole system. That can be, and one of the ways to do that is different equipment manufacturers, different operating systems, so that one technique doesn't compromise everything else. Obscurity is, I don't know. An example of obscurity would be not revealing the type of computer operating system, software, and network connection the computer uses. Anybody ever done any scanning? How many of you remember we looked at the packets over in that room over there in the intro to networking? And we looked at a response from the Moodle server. What did it tell us? Anybody remember? It says, I'm a Linux SUSE version 3 point whatever with this service pack level. So a lot of that stuff's available if you know how to get it. Obscurity is one of their terms. I don't think it's a real widely accepted, or at least fall back on bedrock principle. Simplicity, and this one is a big deal because you can, anybody ever out-complex yourself, out-fox yourself? make it so complex that you can't even figure out what you're doing. And then when you do figure out you figure out you haven't done anything. You can make these things so complex that you actually create vulnerabilities rather than preventing vulnerabilities. The other thing that kind of goes along with this is when you're setting up these things to do, use whatever you're familiar with. Just because you heard that Linux is really secure and you don't know anything about it, don't use Linux. Because you're probably going to make a mess. If you know how to set the Linux system up, that's good. If you're familiar with Windows, use the Windows stuff. Whatever you're familiar with, because you can create some real issues. And then they're going to go through, and I'll go through their slides, the Security Plus certification. It is one to look at. And yes, if you take and pass or have taken and passed the Network Plus, still trying to push that one, and you need it, I'll give you 5 points on your final grade. If you don't need it, we'll just carry it forward. And if you never need it, then you got a certification whenever you graduate. I wouldn't go for this one quite yet. Actually, I wouldn't go for this one until we've done all of the security courses, because they, in spite of the fact that this book says, oh yeah, this is all of the stuff that's in Security Plus, it's better to, when we do firewalls, it's better to do a little bit more about whatever, a little bit more than just this part of what we're going to do. There are some places that want Security Plus. We had a student last year who had an internship at a place that she really liked. And they said, if you get a Security Plus, we'll hire you. And she did, and then they did hire her. She's, as far as I know, very happy there. So there are not as many people want that at this point, I think, around here anyway, as want A+, because Korean, one of the major employers, and they do have huge networks, and they do have to comply with HIPAA. Korean and Lewis Gale, if you think about a hospital and the number of things that they have and the electronic records keeping that they have and the databases that they have and the fact that they're trying to use all of this foolproof electronics so that they don't get the wrong medicines to the patient, they're huge networks. So they're going to be big employers of networkers. As you're going through these things, and this is my little, I guess, commercial here, look at where jobs are available before you say, yeah, I've got to go here. If you got to stay in the Roanoke Valley, take a hard look. If you're willing to relocate, if you just want something as a, oh, let's see how many are there, go to WashingtonPost.com and do a search on IT jobs. And see if you don't find somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000. And there are a lot of them. Some of them want a lot of experience, obviously, but there are a lot of jobs in some of these locations. And you go to the Roanoke Times and search, and how many jobs do you find there? 3? Maybe?
And 5 years experience.
And 5 years experience, yeah, that's true. Types of security jobs, computer security tools, tactics to defend against. It does include security issues. Broad categories, information security, managerial, and technical. And the managerial is when you are the one that's planning the network security defenses. And if you were looking at certifications, probably the CISSP, don't ask me what the letters stand for, is the one that would be a manager. The Security Plus, Ethical Hacker, those kinds of things would be geared more towards the technical position. Matt asked about penetration testing, or mentioned penetration testing. That's one of the things that ethical hacking teaches you to do, and the ethical part is that you don't try to break into these systems without permission, and you don't try to do damage. You're trying to find the security holes so that Adam and Chris don't have as much work to do at the bank when they're trying to get people's identities back, and that things don't get stolen out of those accounts. What are the vulnerabilities? Those things are there. It's beyond where you would go, obviously, after this course, but there are things that are there. I'm going to leave those. This book is the new one. It's got the 2008. I rambled on enough, I think, but security, I guess the one point I would make is there's no panacea. There's no one-click solution to security. There are lots of elements, and the elements that are required are going to be different in different locations, different times. What are we trying to protect? How valuable is it? How much do we want to spend on it? How experienced are our users? And there are hundreds of things that you can consider when you sit down and figure out what you're going to do with security. A location like this, we have, I'd say, a moderate degree of security, and I want you to look at that during this course, and then we'll break out into groups and do security policies, which will be presented on the last day, and you get graded by your peers. And if you give all hundreds, I just throw those out. But what steps can be taken? This is not a real big network, but it has some threats, obviously. All you guys, and you're going to get to be bigger threats, I hope, as you go through this. What issues are there? What are the vulnerabilities? What can you do to any of these things? Now that I've rambled on, questions? No questions. Not a real hard topic, right? What is security?